I was involved in something that I am ashamed of, and looking back, I had no business being involved. I was involved in some kind of shady dealings for some wealthy people, and I can't even remember it all anymore. My memory is almost half gone. When I remember some of the things, the memories are incomplete. To give a little bit of backstory, I come from a piss-poor family. Both of my parents were good-for-nothing junkies and had no business being parents. I was an accident, and it really showed. I wasn't even old enough to form proper memories when my dad walked out one night and never came back. Even after he left, my mom never stopped abusing drugs, and it was not long before she ended up dead, and I ended up in an adoption home. She had isolated herself from all of her family members, and none of them wanted anything to do with me. I don't think it was out of hate for me, not really. More that they did not want to shoulder her burden, I guess. I remember that they tracked down my aunt, and she straight up told me that she wanted nothing to do with me, and that she hoped that my mother would burn in hell for what she did. I never did find out the bulk of it, so I don't know what she did. From a young age, I had to work shitty side jobs, doing long hours just to get by, just to build up some modicum of savings so that I could make it out of my shitty situation. Once I turned 18 years old and was forced to stand on my own 2 feet, I had a small set of savings that allowed me to rent a shitty rundown apartment in the shitty part of a big city. I'm not going to tell you which city or even which state. I don't want to narrow it down too much. Anyway, so I started dating a girl, and for a while I was happy. That was until I was diagnosed with cancer. I had no health insurance, I did not have the cash for any treatments, and my girl, well, she did not want to stick around and support me. She told me that she was too young to deal with something like that, whatever that means. I did not have the energy to work more physical labor. I was struggling and scared every single day that I was going to die, that I was going to waste away, that I wasn't going to make it, that maybe I would die from starvation before the cancer even got to me, since I couldn't work and I barely had any money to my name. Anyway, at one point, I managed to score a job working for this rich dude. Like, I'm talking super rich. He had this massive property, and he needed people to clean and do odd jobs. I can't even remember how I got the job in the first place, actually. I know I applied to a few places and someone gave me a call, but I don't really remember. I did cleaning and tending to the massive garden mostly, but ended up doing some painting and decorating under his direct instruction at some point. I don't even know why he picked me. I wasn't in the best health, but I guess I was still in decent shape from working out so much and doing so many physical labor jobs while I was growing up. And one day, he actually approached me personally with a job offer. He said he knew about my situation. I may or may not have laid it on thick, looking for sympathy with the employers. I didn't think it would work with someone as rich as him, but, you gotta survive any way that you can, using any kind of tricks that you can. But anyway, he said that he had a favor to ask of me that would be mutually beneficial. He told me that I was a well-built dude and could make some good money. I was interested, so I asked him about the offer. He told me that he actually ran a modeling business and that was how he made the bulk of his money. He told me that I would do well. I was a little skeptical at first, and I was getting some really weird vibes, but eventually I said sure. I needed the money, so I told him I would love to work as a model. It's funny because I didn't even actually ask him what kind of modeling or anything like that. I was just so focused on the money. He was actually pretty blasé about the whole thing. He brought me into a room in his house with all white walls, took a couple of shots of me with his phone, like headshots, body shots, and the like, and then he handed me a phone of my own. It was this shitty Nokia brick. This shit was older than me. He told me to keep it safe, and that he would contact me in the coming days. It sketched me out a little bit, but whatever. I really, really needed this money. Things only got sketchier from there, but I'm going to try and speed this story up. It's already going to be much too long. He did have a modeling agency, but it was mostly bullshit. He was just using it as a way to ease me in. The real place that he wanted me to work at was this nightclub that was also owned by him, I think, and maybe someone else too. He told me that was where the real money was. This nightclub was actually pretty famous in the city. Lots of people there every single night. But only a select few are allowed into the private section. This is where he wanted me to work. He would have me take these bunk modeling photos every so often as a kind of a front, I guess, and make it look like I was doing above the board stuff. But by night, I would be in the private section of this nightclub. The only people allowed into this private section were wealthy people, very wealthy people, celebrities sometimes. Some of them would wear masks of all kinds to try and conceal their identities. All kinds of masks, shitty plastic ones, handcrafted ceramic ones, or even sometimes just those terrible half-face masquerade masks. Both men and women, surprisingly. The first day that I was there, I didn't really know what I was supposed to do or what the deal was. I agreed to it without even knowing. That is how desperate I was. I didn't even really listen to the job. I listened for the money, and that's how I made my choice. I had an inkling of a feeling of what he was asking me to do, but I didn't really want to think about it. I was stood around like a lemon for half the night before a guy in a suit came over to me and told me that an older lady had bid on me. I was never told the sum, but I imagine it was not cheap. This man in the suit, he was my handler, I guess you could call it. Different guy every single night. I never saw the same person twice. I was told before working that every single time I would have two choices: accept the bid and do whatever was asked of me, or never work for them again. I accepted, reluctantly. Now, I am not going to go into detail about this because, like I said, I feel a lot of shame, and I only want to tell you about what I think is relevant. It would be both men and women, sometimes at the same time, and when it was just this, it didn't really bother me so much. Sure, I felt disgusting at the end of the night, and like a disposable object, but I could suck it up just for the money. I was asked to do some incredibly strange things that I do not want to repeat, but it wasn't illegal. Like, it was all above board, kind of. Bear in mind, I had to sign countless documents and NDAs every single time I had a meeting with a client. It was insane. But after a while of working there, I had a really strange night. This older man bid on me. A lot of money too. I was given a key to one of those secluded basement rooms by my handler and told to take a shower and just wait. And so I did. And when I got out of the shower and into the room, an older man was waiting there for me. There was a woman sitting on the bed and wearing a blindfold, and he handed one to me and told me to put it on. He was wearing a really expensive looking suit, and he looked very wealthy. From minute one, it was strange. He spent most of the time, biting me really, really hard. His teeth were sharp and were pricking my legs. At one point, he just bit down really hard on my thigh, and I let out a yelp. He drew blood, and he spent hours just licking the blood, and then re-piercing a hole and doing the same thing again. It hurt really badly, and like I said, he did this for hours. I think he did the same to the other woman too, but I never saw. I just heard her making the same yelping sounds. At one point, he put something in my hands, something cold and metal. He reaches around the back of my head and undoes my blindfold. The woman still has hers on. I can see that there is a knife in my hand, and all of a sudden, my stomach has dropped, and I can feel a deep pit of dread. He offers me a lot of money, more than I had ever seen in my life at one time before. He told me that all he was asking for was for me to make a big cut in myself for him to drink. That's what he told me. He told me to do this and let him drink, and that I would be rich. I asked where I should cut and how much. I was panicking and letting out a barrage of questions. I didn't even know what to do. I didn't even know if I was saying yes yet. And at one point, He just puts his hand around my mouth and squeezes really tight and just says, "Cut." His eyes had this look in them. It was like something had just twigged in them. He had this look of pure, I'm not even sure. It was like the look of a man starving to death who just had this giant juicy steak put right in front of him. So I took the knife and I brought it up to my chest. I did not want to do it anywhere else and cause too much damage and accidentally kill myself. I wasn't an expert on where and I was scared. I just closed my eyes and pressed down and dragged it, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I felt an immediate, sharp pain. I felt anxiety all over my body, and I knew I had screwed up. My hands were shaking so hard that when I had pulled it, I kind of slipped. I put too much pressure. I could feel the blood gushing from me, gushing from my chest. I could see the layer below the skin. I can't recall the name of it. There was a massive gap in my skin. I tried to put pressure on the wound with my hands, and this crazy bastard told me no. And he brought out this fucking goblet or chalice or whatever. He told me that if I moved again, he would make me regret it. He just held it under me and filled it up. And when it was almost full, he took a swig. He downed it almost entirely in one go. I had to listen to him gargle the blood and swill it around in his mouth before spitting it back out into the chalice, and then he made me do the same, and the same for the woman who was still blindfolded. And once she had finished, he swallowed the rest of it. I could not hide my panic. For hours and hours he just sat there and let the blood flow out of my wound as he filled up his cup and sucked on my skin. At one point, I don't know how much time had passed, I felt myself just go cold. My blood felt cold. My entire body felt cold. It was like, my entire body just got this icy, chilling feeling, like I was going to pass out. I could feel it in my veins. I could feel it in my head. I think even my toes and my hands had gone numb. This next thing, I think it was just from a shock or a trick of my imagination maybe, but at one point, it actually felt like I was floating above the room and watching myself just passed out on the bed, like I wasn't inside of my body anymore, like I was completely detached. I did not wake up for hours. I know because I saw the time when I woke up. I had bandages all around my body and was actually in the house of the rich guy who initially hired me. I was in one of his spare rooms with someone attending the side of my bed. He came in and he gave me a spiel. He gave me some half-ass bullshit non-apology before going into a rant about money. He showed me the money. That guy was not lying. I never saw him again, but I could actually pay for my fucking treatment. I basically swore everything off after that. I told him I was done, that I was grateful for the opportunity, but that I only needed money for my treatment. He stared at me for a while with this dead-eyed stare. Then he chuckled to himself and told me that I would be back, that he would call me in maybe a month or so and ask me one more time, that I would not get another offer and to consider it carefully. Fast forward around a month and well, I was broke again. Treatments are expensive. Even just regular appointments and medication cost thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. I had not found another job because I was so weak from my treatments. My hair was falling out. I felt horrible. And when that call came, I did not want to say yes. I had already told myself beforehand I was not going to do it again. I was going to make my own way. I was going to do everything that I could. I wanted to leave it behind and make my own way in life, but he just kept talking and selling it to me, saying that it was even more money than last time, that I would never have to work again, that this would be my last ever job, etc. And I fell for it. Like the fucking idiot that I am, I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I got there to the place as usual, but after hours this time. The entire place was shut down, I think for the entire night. My handler brought me in and briefed me, and by that, I mean that he gave me some clothes to wear and told me which room to go into. Waiting there for me was this older lady. She was wearing a mask, and another dude was also there that was probably around my age. He was wearing a blindfold and was just sitting on the bed. He seemed to be a little bit out of it, I guess I would say. He was kind of swaying back and forth, even while just sitting down. He seemed really off balance. The second that I got in there and changed my clothes, this lady came up to me and grabbed me by my throat. She was squeezing it really tightly actually. It kind of hurt. I couldn't really breathe. She told me to open up my mouth and she forced this drink down me. It was in a glass and was completely clear, but it did not taste like water. It tasted acidic. I almost choked it all up because she would not let go of my throat, and she kept trying to force me to swallow it, and when I sputtered, she slapped me and made me lick the rest off of the floor. Things got so much worse after that. My body started having this fuzzy feeling. I felt this buzzing in the pit of my stomach. At first I felt euphoria, and then at one point I couldn't feel much of anything anymore. My body felt like it weighed nothing, and my vision was so shaky and blurry. It was like it was out of focus at all times. I was seeing things at one point too, or at least I hope I was seeing things. I was seeing shadows flickering around the room, seeing shadows moving really quickly out of the corner of my eye. And at one point I saw a man standing over the bed who wasn't actually there. It was horrifying. I did not know what to trust. The lady asked me to cut the other man. She handed me a knife and told me to make a small cut on his stomach. I was high as shit, and I remember slurring out some words toward him, asking if it was okay if I cut him, but it came out more like, "Cut it, K?" And he didn't even say any words in response to me. He just made this weird moaning sound. When I did it, he didn't even really react. He stayed silent for about a minute, and then when I was instructed to make another cut, he started giggling. He was kicking his feet and laughing like he was being tickled. I don't really want to talk about the rest, but I better finish the story. It kept escalating, and I kept going and making more cuts in this guy, bigger cuts each time. He was laughing and he seemed okay, and I could not even stand up by this point. There was not much that I could do. I remember, and I think this is because of whatever she made me drink, but I remember seeing this tall shadow figure standing just behind this guy. He was so tall that his head hit the ceiling and his body curved across the ceiling. It had these red piercing eyes, and it was just staring at me, staring right into my eyes. It made me feel dread. This lady, she was getting off to this, to say the least. Kept making sounds from behind me and telling me to make more cuts in this guy and then drinking his blood. At one point, I heard something that I will never ever forget. I would say that hearing those words sobered me up instantly, but there was nothing in the world that could make that happen. She told me to stab him. I audibly slurred out what? And she snapped and told me, "Do not make me repeat myself." I was still gripping the blade, and I moved it over to his stomach, and I think I was just going to make a little cut again. I was thinking maybe I just misheard her, or I was hoping so at least. She was shouting at me now, telling me no. She told me, "No, stab him. Stab him in the neck." Again, I had no idea what was going on. I was so out of it, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And I heard her start grunting, a really angry grunt. Then I felt something pressed up against the back of my head. It was cold, and I heard a distinct click. She told me not to move, and I tried my best to stop swaying from side to side. She told me, as clear as day, "You are going to stab him in the neck and kill him, or I will shoot you." And then she just started laughing. I tried to turn my head to look back at her face to kind of gauge her expression, and she slapped me with a gun and told me that if I looked around or hesitated again, that she would kill me, right there on the spot. that I would get no second chances. So I picked up the knife. I had no fucking choice. You have to believe me. She was seriously going to kill me. The other guy was still giggling and swaying back and forth. He didn't have a care in the world. He was still blindfolded and I guess he had no idea what was really going on. I held the blade up towards his neck and she pushed the gun harder against my head and told me, now. And I don't remember the rest. I remember not having the knife in my hand anymore. I remember not hearing the giggling anymore. I remember hearing the lady moaning and laughing, and that went on for quite a while from what I can remember. I remember seeing blood, a lot of blood. There was just a bloody mess everywhere. All over me and my hands, all over the bed. He wasn't moving anymore. He wasn't laughing anymore. I don't know how much time passed by, but the next thing that I remember was that I was not in that place anymore. I was not in that basement room. I was in another room. It was a concrete room with 4 plain walls and a metal table in the middle, along with a couple of metal chairs. I was sat down forcefully. I had to have someone walk me because I was still completely out of it and could barely put one foot in front of the other. Both the rich guy who hired me and the lady were sat there. They talked to me for a long time. Well, rather, they talked at me. They were threatening me, telling me that if I told anyone, that I would be spending the rest of my life in prison for murder. I remember at one point after hearing this, I just groggily said, "Where is he? What did I do?" And I was told to shut up. They gave me the money. They transferred it to me like last time. Well, no, it was never transferred the first time either. They actually gave me a new bank card and an account with a fake name to withdraw from. This one was different from the first. I could still see that shadow figure. Only now it wasn't standing up right to the ceiling. It was kneeling on the floor beside me and I could see that it was grinning. It didn't even have a mouth before, but now it had this bright white, toothy grin. I was made to sign more documents. Then I was told to leave and to never make contact ever again, to never set foot in that place ever again. I was told that if I knew what was best for me, I would leave not only the city, but the state too. They took the Nokia phone that they gave to me. I was left with no evidence whatsoever. Even if I did go to the police, who would believe me, especially all these years later? I had no proof it even happened. That's the only reason I'm telling you it here now, all this time later, just to get it off of my chest. I know I'm a monster. I know that I do not deserve redemption. I've made peace with that. I know I will have to live with the horrible things I've done for the rest of my life. I will have to live with the fact that I killed an innocent man just for money. I've been in remission for the last few years, but if I'm honest, part of me hopes that the cancer comes back. A small part of me, it's just a thought in the back of my head. A small part of me hopes it comes back and actually kills me this time. It's the least that I deserve. I deserve to die from something as horrible as that. I have not set foot in that state since that day. I've actually been out of the country for a while too. I have no idea if any of the same goes on or if it's somewhere else now. I don't know if it was only me or more widespread. I'm sorry, I do not have more answers. This thread actually sort of reminds me of something that happened when I was in high school. I was in a magnet program. These were basically just specialized programs at the various schools in my school district that was ROTC based. All of our instructors were former US military, some from each branch, though most were Army, and all of the programs had a focus on military aviation. The magnet program was called the Aviation Academy, and it was one of a couple of magnet programs available at Arsenal Technical High School in Indianapolis. Anyhow, I was in one of the few ROTC-based extracurriculars: color guard, rifle team, drill team, and raiders. Raiders was an adventure program where we got to go camping, rappelling, etc. One winter, I don't recall which year, I was not part of the cadet staff at the time, so it had to be either freshman or sophomore year. The Raiders had a camping excursion out to Mountain State Park, which is a bit northeast of Indianapolis, and is a park that features some pretty neat old Native American burial mounds, as well as a forest that had some kick-ass hiking paths. Anyhow, we were there for the whole weekend, arriving Friday night, leaving Sunday afternoon, so as soon as we got camp set up, all of the cadets decided to go exploring. The staff chaperones really went with us on hikes, since they were trying to teach us to be self-sufficient. So we set off into the woods. When night started to set, a game of Truth or Dare started up, but I didn't really have any interest in joining in, since there were only 2 girls on that trip, and neither of them was really my type. Instead, I tell them that I am getting hungry, and that I'm going to head back to camp to get some food in me. I wasn't really. I was mischievous back then, and wanted to screw with my fellow cadets. Anyhow, after wandering far enough away that I didn't feel like they'd see or hear me, I circled back around for a dry creek bed, trying to be as quiet as possible, since my goal was to screw with them, and up a slope, so that I could approach them from a direction opposite to the direction that I left them from, so they would be less likely to think that it was me. At the time, I had an Army-issue flashlight that I found during a summer bivouac we had at a National Guard base. It was one of those upside-down L-shaped lights that had a belt clip and a few different colored lenses for signaling. I swapped in the blue lens and set to work shining it toward the other cadets, who had taken up on a wooden bridge/platform that spanned the dry creek bed. As I wandered around through the woods, probably 100 or 150 feet out from them, just far enough that I did not think they would hear my footsteps or be able to make out my shape, the girls started shouting and pointing toward where I was. I could not really hear much other than excited shouting, but I could see them pretty well since they had a lantern on and I had a decent vantage point from the top of the slope. Most of them gathered on the side of the bridge and focused on where I was, but I noticed one of them, he was one of the seniors, staring in the opposite direction, who then starts pointing. That's when I see that there is a blue light on the other side of the bridge off in the woods, moving around. I just sort of figured at the time that it was someone else with a light like mine, or maybe one of the fluorescent lights that sort of glow blue. So I laughed to myself, turned off my light, and started to reposition so that I could screw with them from a different direction. I don't know why I enjoy messing with my friends like that. I think I may be an asshole. As I am wandering through the woods, light off, and as quietly as I can in combat boots, I start hearing something like the wind rustling through in the trees, but it's close to the ground, and there was not even a breeze at the time. I stopped to listen, to see if I could figure out what it actually was, but I started getting the feeling that I was being watched, and I started to think that maybe it was whoever had that other blue light that I had seen earlier. And then I heard it. It wasn't wind. It was like a dozen people whispering all at once, but I could not make out any actual words. It sounded like when kids act like they're whispering, but they're just making indeterminate noises. And I start to freak out, and I take off back toward the rest of the cadets who were still on the bridge. I assume they hear me running through the woods towards them. I did not turn my light back on, since I was in a panic, and I could see their light just fine still. But they all just take off full sprint away from the bridge, back toward the camp. I fucking trip and roll down the goddamn slope, and by the time that I recover, they are far enough away that I cannot use their lantern light to navigate, so I flip on my flashlight and start running down the dry creek bed, since it was mostly clear of tripping hazards and I was beat up from my tumble. Now, when I was in high school, I was a decent runner. My mile was just under 6 minutes, and my adrenaline was flowing since I was in a panic from the weird whispers, but I caught a blue glint out of the corner of my eye, and I saw that there was a blue light keeping pace with me to my right. I decided that I wanted to be around another person rather than running through the woods with whatever had made the whisper noises earlier, so I book up the bank of the creek bed all the way towards the light, hoping it was one of the cadets or one of the chaperones, but the light just dissipates. I don't even really know how to explain it, but it looked like someone shining a blue light down the path, like I could see the bright spot and then the beam, but then it just sort of broke up into mist and disappeared. I stopped dead in my tracks and considered my options for a while, and decided I was going to follow the creek bed back, since it was a little more straight than the main path, and the blue light I had seen had my nerves even more on edge. As I got back down to the creek bed, I saw that the blue light was back on the main path, so I booked it again. That's when I noticed that was not the only source of noise in the woods, which is not normal, but the other cadets were now somehow behind me on the main path. I could see their lantern light. I gave zero fucks about how that happened and continued to book it to the camp. I wound up getting back before them, even though they ran off before me and I was chasing them. And I sat by the fire to keep watch. When they got back, they were all visibly shaken by the floating lights in the woods. Apparently, they had seen more of them, from what I could tell, coming from at least 5 different places, and while none of them heard the whispers, they did all experience the weird silence that I did. I never did figure out what actually happened, but the whispers sounded low enough to the ground that the story about the Yukon gnomes or whatever sort of reminded me of this.